Am.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining our workshop of presenting your best self in your job search. Here we have Liz Martinez. She is the Career Services Manager at Galvanize. Liz started her career as a technical recruiter and an avid appreciator of technology. At Galvanize, she aids students and alumni of data science and hack Reactor programs throughout all stages of the job search. I will leave it to you now, Liz. Enjoy the workshop.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. So I was going to give an intro, but that's already been done for me. So today we're going to be talking about presenting your best self in the job search. So initially, when this webinar was proposed, we were going to go into LinkedIn, GitHub, and behavioral interviewing. However, in going through all these materials, I really wanted to dive deep into LinkedIn and explore more of GitHub because it's not something that I've had access to as someone that's been a recruiter. I've spent about 7 years of my career recruiting. I've done tech recruiting right out of college, and then I did campus recruiting for a couple of companies in New York City. And now I'm here at Galvanize doing the career coaching. So I have a pretty holistic view of the entire job search. And of course, I've been a candidate too. So I just want to help you craft the best profile portfolio online in this very competitive, weird market right now. We're dealing with strange things where you're not getting a lot of face-to-face interactions with people. Well, I guess face-to-face via video, but you're not getting to meet them in person through networking events or if you're doing on-site interviews. So I think it's more important than ever to have a really strong presence online before you're put into the interview process. Oh, I didn't finish my thought. So we were gonna do all three of those, but I took off behavioral interviewing because I didn't wanna rush through any of this and I wanna make sure that we have time for questions in between these two. So we'll have 5 minutes for questions after LinkedIn, and then we'll have questions after the GitHub part until our time is up. And you can connect with me at LinkedIn. I certainly hope so, especially after talking to you all about it today. All right, so the slide deck and rubrics are available on my own personal GitHub that I just created this weekend. It is by no means what you should be striving towards. I think I have one green box on there, which will talk about the significance or rather insignificance of that. But all of the materials, we have rubrics that we created. And when I say we, I did not do this on my own. So my awesome dear friend, Kelly Stroh, she is back here, my moral support, and also fielding Q&A. She put together this beautiful slide deck. I just spewed information at her and she put it all in a very beautiful, condensed and straightforward presentation. So you will have access to all of that on my GitHub. And then the plan is next month, I'll be doing a webinar that's gonna focus solely on behavioral interviewing. So I'll talk about it, I'll announce it on my LinkedIn, so hopefully we connect. And I'm gonna share it with data circles as well. So that's potentially another opportunity for you to find out more about it. All right, so let's talk about LinkedIn. We're gonna go over why LinkedIn is worth your time, how to make an impression on this platform, pitfalls that candidates fall into commonly that bring you further back in your progress in your job search. We're going to talk about data science specific things to feature, and then going through each component of the profile and highlighting what information should be there. All right, so first question, why does LinkedIn matter? So I got this stat the end of last year, and it says an estimated 95% of recruiters use LinkedIn to source and vet candidates. Now, to be totally honest, I do not know what the rest of recruiters are using that 5%. But recruiters use it in two ways. They are either using it for supplemental information. So maybe they have gotten your resume from their applicant tracking system, or maybe you were referred, and so they want to learn more about you beyond just, a series of bullet points. Or they are going to use this as the origin of their search. So this is amongst the most humanizing elements of your application process. You get to have a face featured, you get to show personality, and you're going to get far more about you across than just what is limited to one sheet of paper on your resume. Oh, and of course, companies are posting jobs on there, and they make it really easy if they have that easy apply option. So there's a lot of good reasons to have a LinkedIn, but just having one is not good enough. You want to stand out, and that will be the theme that I talk about through all of my career coaching that I do, especially in this presentation. But if you walk away from anything with this, if you walk away from this with anything, it is that you need to make human connections to people. And you can do that on LinkedIn through a variety of ways that maybe people don't think of initially. But this is an opportunity for you to show more of your personality, show more of your interests, and hopefully that will play out into a job that fits what you're looking for. Okay, so before we get into what you should do, let's just cover a couple common pitfalls that can definitely harm you. So outdated information. Make sure that you're keeping up to date on the jobs that you have, even if your current job is not as a data scientist, and we're going to talk more about that later. Don't have a sparse profile, unprofessional pictures, we're going to talk about next, and off-topic posts. Keep this about your career, about your development, about topics that you're interested in. We don't need to know the top 20 movies of 2019. We don't need to know what political affiliations and opinions you have. Put that somewhere else, but keep LinkedIn about your job. You don't want people to judge you based on things that you prefer in your personal life that really don't have an impact on the work that you do, but it could definitely turn people off if you're sharing stuff like that on there. Okay, so what are recruiters looking for? So can only speak from my own experience, having worked on a variety of teams. I've worked for a third-party agency, I've worked on the corporate side, I've had other human resources roles that weren't directly recruiting related. So I spent a lot of time looking at profiles, looking at resumes. And the bottom line is, if you can put yourself in the shoes of whoever is going to be reviewing your content, think about what's intriguing. Especially as I started my career as a sourcer, I spent hours, probably 6 hours a day, because I was the newbie on the team and had to do all the grunt work that the senior recruiters didn't want, which meant just going through profiles like one after the other. And the ones that I ended up moving on to a recruiter to contact were the ones that were intriguing. It was not just a regurgitation of your resume, which should be featured on here. There's actually a new featured area. LinkedIn is constantly changing, so whenever I make these presentations, I inevitably have to go back and update something. And so just this weekend, I realized, oh, there's this new featured square where you can upload your resume and you can upload links to your GitHub. But you want to tell your story. That is the point of this. It is so you can fill in all of the blanks that are between the bullet points you have on your resume that really just limits you and your experience to one page. You're able to humanize this and make connections simply by putting pictures. It doesn't even have to be pictures of yourself doing things, but just photos of the work that you do. And be active, which we will definitely get more into towards the end of this part of the presentation. All right, so let's start kind of from top down if you are looking at a profile, your picture. number one, have one. Honestly, as a recruiter, I would rather see, I hate to say it, but this guy wearing a Santa hat, I would rather check out his profile than someone's profile that has no picture whatsoever. So recent photos are best. This is something to keep in mind for those that are actively searching for a job. So if you're at an event and someone is talking to you, but they don't quite remember your name, they're like, oh, I think I remember Liz. And she had darker hair, it was kind of wavy. Well, if they go on LinkedIn and they're typing in Liz and maybe Galvanize, and then they see a picture of me when maybe I had bleached blonde hair 6 months ago, it's not going to immediately trigger it. And while it probably wouldn't be too hard to dig in and actually look at the facial features, remove that. Like, remove any blockers that someone could potentially have to understanding that this is the same person that they met. So nothing on your face, your head, no mirror selfies. I've been seeing those, no cartoons, no characters, no picture of you laying down on your couch with your adorable dog, as much as I love this photo with a messy background. Keep it simple, mostly your face with a neutral background. Okay, the banner. So this is something that not a lot of people pay attention to, but it is an opportunity for you to show effort, that you're here for more than just trying to grab jobs from people. You are here and you want this to really be a reflection of you. So this is an appropriate place for me to feature a photo of my beautiful dog. You can get creative with this. So I've had a lot of students come through that in their code editor, they've like typed up something clever and they just take a screenshot of it, and that is their backgrounds. You know, cityscapes, nature, geometric designs. If for some reason you cannot find a picture on your own collection, go to this website, Canva. It is really great. You really just type in LinkedIn banner and they will give you a lot of options for free. I'm gonna come back to really, really basic things because a lot of people think there's like all of these complex systems that recruiters are using. But at the end of the day, these are humans that are looking at a profile. So your job is to catch their attention the first time that they open up your profile, and having some kind of intriguing, unique, creative background is going to further the chance of them scrolling down and learning more about you. Okay, so your headline. This is what appears right underneath your name. So name the job you want and the location where you want it. Your title can be data scientist, machine learning engineer, any job that you have the intention of having in the near future. Do not make your title student or job seeker, because you are more than just a student or job seeker. Let this be reflective of your skills and what your career aspirations are. Now, there is a little bit of a moral dilemma that I face with some of the students that I work with, where they're asking the question, well, what if I don't currently have a job? Well, what if I currently have a job and my title isn't data scientist? This happens pretty often, and they have this question like, is it lying to have my headline say data scientist if really my title is, data community coordinator or data analyst? So I'm just going to speak for myself. I do not believe that that is a problem whatsoever. They can also, it doesn't just have to be your title. It can be a reflection of your skills, your interests, and your goals. And keep in mind that LinkedIn is for more than just job hunting. There are other people on here trying to make connections and create communities. So Kelly is a really perfect example of this. So her title currently has analyst in it, in the title, but it doesn't really talk about, and it's not going to showcase the fact that she is working with and loves data. So instead of putting a title there, you can also put a field like she did, data science and analytics. So when people are looking at your profile, then they will hopefully get down to your experience section and see your job title, and that will reflect your area of interest. Okay, so this is the About section, a section on LinkedIn that notoriously gets neglected. There's not a lot of energy or creativity put into a lot of the profiles that I see. Now, I have seen some really great ones, like this is an example, but it's not uncommon for people to have just a word or a line maybe. There's like the auto-generated ones that LinkedIn creates, like 4 years of analyst experience working in biomechanical engineering turned data scientist. I'm sure no one out there actually has that on there, but you get the picture. Like LinkedIn will auto-generate one that is reflective of the experiences that you're included. Do not use this. This is really your opportunity to draw them in, to make some kind of connection. This should really be your story. So when a recruiter or anyone viewing your profile pulls it up, they will only get maybe 3 or 4 lines, and then they'll have to click more. And that is where you need to have some kind of compelling intro that will hopefully get them to click and then learn more about you. You can talk about your education, your skills, expertise, your interests, hobbies, values, a link to your GitHub. Again, this is outdated from like 2 months ago when it was just media down here, but now there's a completely separate featured section. But this is an opportunity for you to showcase your personality. This should take you on a little bit of a journey, or take your viewer on a little bit of a journey. Now, I don't need to know everything that's happened from cradle to kindergarten to the last day of 6th grade to high school graduation. This should be about your journey with whatever career you are aspiring to move into. So I'm going to read this one out loud. I think it's a great example, but keep in mind that this is not for everyone, and the length of this is not for everyone. If you can do this in 4 sentences, great. If you need 4 paragraphs, as long as you are making sure that the recruiter or whoever is viewing your profile is intrigued and that they want to move on to the next sentence, then that should be your guideline. So here we go. I'm a UX-driven full-stack developer with a bachelor's of science in marketing. As a child, I dreamt of growing up to become a superhero, a pro athlete, or an astronaut. However, I'm not rich enough to become Batman. My athletic abilities only took me through college athletics, and I get motion sick in vehicles that move much slower than a rocket. Now let's fast forward to today, where I begun my career as a full-stack developer. Working in an industry where I can make a difference in people's lives has always been important to me. Coding gives me the flexibility to work in many different industries, on many different projects, and approach and tackle new problems every day. I love to dig deep into coding languages. Those are listed. I'm an entrepreneur, lacrosse player, outdoors enthusiast, and Magic the Gathering fan. Coding allows me to incorporate any facet of my life into technology, and that is exciting. So I will say again, this is not for everybody, but what I get from this is this person is pretty lighthearted. They have a sense of humor. They're probably looking for a place that will value that. He's probably not looking for a place in corporate finance where he has to go to work every day and he has to wear a suit and he's working, 80 hours a week. This is really reflective of him and where he sees himself, where he would like to end up with a company. So I just want to share one more example just to show you the difference that your own personal voice in these narratives can have, yet they're still sending the same message, like, here's my experience and here's how I see my experience fitting into my future. So this was from a grad that I just recently worked with from the software engineering program. So my professional life began immediately after school. At 18, I volunteered for the Navy's nuclear engineering program, completed the 2-year school, and worked with 2 nuclear reactors on board the USS Stennis for 4 years. I specialized in electrical distribution systems, maintaining balance and continuity within the system. The program provided me with industry and operational experience at a young age. Seeing system level operations during high intensity evolutions garnered an interest in the conceptualization, research, and design of other complex systems. I like to look at the big picture and determine how to make it bigger or more efficient, and then the proficiencies are listed. So this person probably has a different personality. They're probably looking for an environment that's much more structured, maybe similar to what they experienced in the military. So it doesn't have to be a happy-go-lucky message. It just should be a reflection of you, and your voice and your tone should come out. And I drill this into my students and then in my grads. Before you post any of this stuff, have a friend look at it. After you've been spending a lot of time looking at these things, you're gonna miss things. You're gonna miss words, you're gonna miss punctuation. And so if you have another set of eyes look at this before you post it, it's gonna help determine what really resonates with them, what you should keep, what you should get rid of, and then obviously fixing any mistakes. I say this on a very frequent basis, but my father from a young age drilled into me, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. He would be so proud to hear that I say this on a daily basis to everyone, but you really don't. Like, if this about section is your first impression that you're making on someone and it doesn't sound nice or it has a lot of errors in it, there are a lot of people, especially recruiters, that look at this stuff all day that can easily get turned off by that. Like, how am I supposed to take this candidate seriously if they haven't even taken the time to really evaluate and proofread all of these things? Okay, experience. So do not just copy and paste your resume. As a recruiter, when I was looking at experience, I did not want to see the bullets pulled straight from someone's resume. I have access to it, either because the candidate was forward thinking enough to include it on here. So I hope every single one of you after this will make sure your resume is uploaded. But if they are using this as a supplemental resource to do some more research on you after getting your resume from another system, they don't need to see all of that in this experience. They already know this. So this is an opportunity for you to create yet another narrative that connects the bullets in your resume. Again, 4 sentences, 4 paragraphs, whatever you need to fully explain each of your experiences. A best practice that I like to talk about is having this master resume that has everything listed that you've ever done. And then as you apply to each job, you're taking them over and you're making a different resume for it. So this is the opportunity for you to use more of those bullet points that haven't made it onto your resume for this particular role. But you can make sentences into them and make it as part of your narrative. So really think about this as your experience in the role, not just telling someone what your roles and responsibilities were. So I have an awesome example from a data science grad that I have been working with for the past few months. And this, you'll see that this really sounds like an experience. You're going through this person's journey as they develop and they've worked on this project. So my first backend developer project was updating the way users could log in through social media and how authorization was handled. I refactored the OAuth code into a flexible class-based system and tied it into a JWT authorization framework using access and refresh tokens. Lots of words that don't mean a ton to me, but someone technical, this would resonate. However, I still feel engaged as a reader and want to learn more. So this project was an incredible learning and transformative experience. I learned how to read and interact with legacy code. Writing code and reading your own work is easy, but unraveling and understanding someone else's is more akin to detective work. I felt like this phase of the project was a crash course in how pros write Python. I jumped into this head first and was pushed way outside my coding comfort zone. Now I know so much more about properly testing code, writing clean and readable code with solid documentation, and deploying to AWS. I'll forever be grateful for my first project, and my experience here taught me the essential skills to research and developing solutions independently and effectively. So you are going through this experience. It is clear how things started and transformations that were made. This you can come back to. This is actually pulled from my own LinkedIn. So it wasn't just me saying what my roles and responsibilities were. I was launching a new program with this company, so I kind of had to market it a little bit. And what you can't see here is that I actually had a YouTube video on it. So if you can add more media to these things, then it'll be even more intriguing. Okay. Projects. Do not bury your projects under achievements. So the old LinkedIn had your projects listed pretty high up on the profile, but for some reason they have decided to bury it under achievements, which is pretty far down. And I believe you have to actually click through 2 different drop downs to even enter this. So if you are making a transition into a new space, these things right here are your proof that you can do the job. You're not going to have roles on there that talk about your ability to use NLP and all the different tools and technologies. These projects are the proof, and it is your job to make sure that it is high priority in the order of things that recruiters are looking for. So I'm not going to read these, but note again that this is narrative style, not just bullet points. And we're going to do a quick tutorial. Now, I don't anticipate anyone is going to pull up their LinkedIn right now and add a project, but I want to go through this because, again, all of these resources are going to be available to you at the end of this for you to go back and work on stuff. So you're going to add an experience just like you would if you started a new job. Your title is going to be your project name. Make it something catchy, something that you think would spark some interest in a viewer of your profile. Your company name is going to be personal projects. You're going to have a duration, so start and end dates. I would do the same dates. And then a solid narrative style description. Again, not bullets. Ideally, this is something that you can pull from your README on GitHub, which we will talk about. And then links to GitHub or the site where it's been deployed, and then upload media screenshots. Let someone, but without someone having to worry about going and checking out these links, show them a quick overview of what they can expect if they check it out. Okay, recommendations. As a recruiter, to me, this was one of the most valuable sections in a profile. So while I never dismissed a candidate out of consideration for a role for not having one, I definitely advanced some candidates because of the recommendations. So your recommendations are, how do your peers and managers feel about working with you? Get recommendations from people you went to school with, from your past jobs, even if they're not data related. This is them expressing what you're like to work with just as a coworker. And then, you know, pay it forward, offer to write recommendations for people that you know as well. But these things can be really powerful. But again, if you don't have them, me as a recruiter, I never said, oh, he doesn't have any, we're just going to move on with him. Skills. I'm sure many of us have seen the skills section on here. You can add thousands of skills on here. It's useful for searching when recruiters are looking for key terms based on job descriptions that they're hiring for, but it is not going to replace your about section and your experiences. It looks a little bit better with endorsements, but again, the recruiters don't know that maybe the dozen people that have endorsed you for Bayesian statistics. But if you take LinkedIn assessments, so if you get LinkedIn Premium, you'll have access to LinkedIn Learning. And I highly encourage that you take advantage of it. One, there's just a ton of great content out there. But two, if you complete some of the modules, then your completion will show up on your profile. And that way recruiters, hiring managers know that, hey, this person knows up to level 4 of whatever Python assessment that we have. Education, this is super straightforward. Just make sure you have your schools on there. If you have some non-traditional educational institution like Galvanize or Reactor, feel free to add a description so that people know exactly what you were there for and what skills that you may have acquired. And finally, in LinkedIn, we're going to talk about activity. So the people that follow others, groups, and or organizations are going to get more views than those who do not. Now, following someone does not mean that you are connecting with them. You don't have to get permission from anyone to follow them and see what posts they have. But as a recruiter, I would look very often at what their activity tab says. So like, what are they saying? How often are they doing this? Are they posting their own content? You don't need to post your own content all the time. If you read something, I mean, Kelly, I'm gonna plug her right here. She is phenomenal at finding really great content and sharing it. And it's definitely share worthy because I have students that go and they're like, oh, wow, this is a really cool article. So the key is not just sharing it if you're going to take it from someone else, but it's put a line or two in it, why it's intriguing to you, and then post it. If you read something from a Medium article, there are so many opportunities for activity, but this is something that recruiters are going to look at. They want to know, hey, is this person just on LinkedIn to get a job? Or are they here because they're really involved in this community and could probably be an asset to our team? So here's an example. I'm not going to read these all. You will have all of these available to review afterwards. But follow organizations that you're interested in. Think about, if you're thinking about what to post, follow companies where you'd like to work. Let's just start with that. Follow nonprofits that champion the causes that you care about. Follow educational groups that put on conferences and meetups, such as this one. And that will be a good start to creating a following so that you get more content on your feed and can then share it. And then people that are also following these things, I have no idea how the LinkedIn algorithm actually works, but anecdotally, I can say that when people are belonging to and following a lot of these groups, they end up being featured in other people's news feeds. And then lastly is activity with following hashtags. So following hashtags enables you to view posts from people outside your network that are relevant to your interests in job search. So this is what I was saying, like you don't have to connect to them. You don't even necessarily have to be following them, but if they have a post and they tag it with something like this, you can just search for that tag and you can start absorbing their content as well. So things that you're interested in, think about broad topics, think about libraries, tools that you use, your techniques and your skills. Those are things that you should think about while finding activity on LinkedIn. So we're gonna pause here for a few minutes and go over some Q&A.
So let's go through 2 questions and then don't get to, we'll answer on the GitHub account. First, how far back can experience go? Also, if you're a recent grad, do you suggest incorporating all relevant projects from school? And when should you remove them?
How far back can you go? I view LinkedIn as your career professional time capsule. So I would say anything, however far you want to go back. Like I don't want to say you need to go back, like my first job was as a dry cleaner. I'm not listing Deer Lake cleaners on my LinkedIn. So I'm going back as far as like my first, I call it my big girl job, where I got to dress up for work every day. That was it. If you're a student, I don't think you ever need to remove your projects. It's totally up to you, but as long as you're keeping up to date on the rest of your projects and those are going to appear higher up, then I think it's also a good way for people to see that you've been working on projects beyond just right now when you might be in a job search, that maybe this interest goes back 8 years, 9 years.
Should you have more on LinkedIn than on your resume? For example, I have taken some older experiences off my resume since there was too much.
Mm-hmm.
But should I keep them on my LinkedIn?
Yes. Yeah, I think I kind of answered that with the last one. I think it's really cool to actually just go back and see where people have come from, especially when they're transitioning into a new industry or a new role. Seeing what they do. Like I saw recently, a guy was working at a car wash the year before he started Reactor, and now he's at Google. Like, to me, that's awesome. I love seeing those kinds of stories. So I don't think there's any reason to not include those, but not have them on your resume, because your resume is just like your one page to sell people. Yes, Coursera. So if you're taking any Coursera courses, they do give you the option of having it posted and it's like certified on your LinkedIn profile. Okay, so we're gonna go into GitHub. So admittedly, I am not a technical person. I can only evaluate this based on being a recruiter and helping out hiring managers, and also now in my current role at Galvanize, when students come to me and they say, hey, does this look good? I can say, yes, this looks good, but I don't know if your content is great. So this is not teaching you about Git, the importance of GitHub necessarily. This is why you should be updating your GitHub, making it look nice, and how it can resonate. So jobs in data science and analytics vary greatly when it comes to the technical skill, the aptitude that they're looking for in candidates. So as a result of that, some recruiters are going to look at your GitHub and some are not. I will say that this is happening more in this current environment. I had a grad that I'm working with that had a stellar technical assessment with a hiring manager. It went really well. There were no questions asked, as in, you know, I think you could have done it better. Do you think you have a better way? Like, they walked out of the experience feeling on top of the world. The next day, they got a notification that they were no longer moving forward in the process. They reached out to the recruiter, and it turns out it was because the hiring manager went back and took a look at their profile, and it was not a good representation of their skills. They didn't have enough projects on there, and as a result, they decided not to move forward. So I can't say that this person didn't do a good job of keeping their GitHub up to date. I don't think that's the case at all. Like, this person's very conscientious. But the point of this story is that this is something that employers are looking at right now, I think more than ever. So assume that it's going to be looked at for every application that you submit. And if you neglect your GitHub, this is just missing an opportunity for you to potentially impress people. All right, so GitHub is another piece of this portfolio puzzle that you have. So why is GitHub worth your time? So this is focused mostly for people that are newer to GitHub. This is not for my advanced software engineers that for some reason may be in attendance to this, but this is just why you should make this a priority and why you should firm up on your skills and make this a focus as you are creating a portfolio in a job search. So even if you don't use GitHub and you don't think it's a great resource, employers do. And if they don't use GitHub, they're using some other version of version control. So like I also just said, hiring teams are starting to look at profiles and making determinations on if you're going to advance. This is also an opportunity for you to connect with other coders. Knowledge sharing is so strong, and I deal with so many students that suffer from imposter syndrome coming out of this program, and I'm willing to bet a lot of people that are making any transition into a brand new industry are going to feel the same way. They're like, oh, my code's not good enough. As long as you are making this the best possible portfolio and you are showing growth as you continue to commit stuff, then you are going to be some kind of inspiration or aspiration for people who code that have less experience than you. So maybe you've been coding for 2 days, but I'm going to come in and this is my day 1 of coding, and I see, oh, this is what Kelly accomplished on day 2. Okay, this is something that I can work towards. Versus if I'm going to go to one of the instructors that might work here for software engineering and seeing what 12 years of industry experience is going to show. Like, that is a far more effective and it resonates far more with someone who has less experience to see that, okay, this is what 2 days of coding is going to look like, and here's what I think 4 months of coding can look like. And then it's also an opportunity for you to get help and to offer help. And then finally, just bookkeeping for your code. Keeping good records means that you're going to be able to use your code 10 years from now. If you come back to it, you're going to know how to run it, why you wrote it the way that you did. Okay, so a few steps in creating a great GitHub. 1, you need to get comfortable with Git. 2, you need to put some effort into your profile's appearance. If a recruiter, if some non-technical person is the first one to look at this, you want to make it visually enticing and appealing so that they want to explore more. And then 3 is going to be making project repos presentable regardless of your coding experience. This may be my very favorite slide of this entire presentation. So a little bit more about GitHub. So GitHub is a much harder, complex aspect of your portfolio to master when you're a beginner, because it really does require a pretty solid understanding of Git. So it's not like LinkedIn, which is designed to be super user-friendly. It's focused on being functional and efficient, and with the primary user in mind being some kind of engineer. So the profiles are less glamorous, more utilitarian looking, but you can still take steps to stand out. All right, so the essentials of Git. To have a great GitHub, you have to be good at Git. Now, I'm not going to discuss details on any of these topics on the screen right now. 1, we don't have the time. 2, I have no idea what they mean, and this is not my area of expertise. However, these slides were created in partnership with data scientists that I work with software engineers, and we have resources which you'll have access to with the PDF that's on my GitHub for all of these things. So the purpose of these slides is not to present them today, but so that you can come back and follow the links later. So key concepts, common commands, troubleshooting, the essentials, and workflow. but here is where I can lend a little bit of my expertise. All right, so let's take a look at the anatomy of a GitHub. All right, so Kelly has so kindly volunteered us to look at her profile and to go through the things that she does well, and then let's also go through the things that she could do better. So I mentioned at the beginning that we have rubrics that we created, a rubric that you'll go through and look at your LinkedIn and see where there are areas of improvement, and then there's also a rubric for your GitHub. So I might throw in the terminology of points, and that's where it's coming from. So this is not great, but it's good enough. There's a number of things we can improve about it, but there's also things that don't need to be touched. So let's go into these specifics. All right, different picture, same face across 2 platforms. Again, this is for people that are actively searching for jobs. So if you are not looking for a new job and you're not worried about making sure you catch people's attention and don't risk them confusing you for someone else, then leave it as 2 different photos. But here, what you don't see in her GitHub picture is that she's petting a puppy. Her LinkedIn photo is holding a puppy. So at the very least, we see a picture of Kelly smiling and petting puppies. But ideally, she'll have the same photo for all of her profiles. Her name, perfect. Now there aren't a lot of variations of Kelly beyond Kel, but having the same name across all of your profiles. So if her name was Alexandra and she has Alex in one place and Alexandra in a few other places, yes, it doesn't take, you know, the knowledge of a brain surgeon to go in and say, oh, Alexander and Alex are probably the same person. But just remove that. Like, you want to make the job of a recruiter or hiring manager as easy as possible. So if you can take out that little step of, I think this is the same person, let me kind of go back and forth and compare. So use the same name across all platforms. All right, she lives in Bremerton, but she is looking for a job in Seattle. So that is why she has Seattle listed in each location. Nothing to change here, great job. All right, kudos for writing a description, but we give Kelly 0 points for actually providing useful information, just something that's going to set her apart or just some insight into her, why she likes code. Yeah, so at least she has something here, but it definitely needs to be improved. All right. Pinned repositories. So this is your opportunity to really showcase the work that you are most proud of. So she has things pinned. You can have up to 6 things pinned on your main page. So she gets points for that. What she doesn't get points for, well, actually, I'll also say this, what you can't see here is that each of these also have a README. Anything that is worth posting on your GitHub must have a README. What she's not going to get points for is having a description for each of these, and also not a very compelling description for these. So word ladder, that sounds actually kind of interesting. Code for my word game deployed on a Flask app. This is not going to make me want to go and check this out and play it on a weekend or in my free time. And having used this application, this game that she made, I actually have a blast using it. So she needs to find a way to convey that in this description. The names are concise, but they could be better. Make it unique. Inventory image classification. Not super exciting. I'm not jumping up and down. Can't wait to click on this link. Utilization of image classification models for online retail inventory. Well, if this said something about seeing lots of pictures of shirts and skirts and shoes in different colors from different companies and how retailers are selling them, that is something I would like to know. So make sure that your descriptions are actually descriptive. I know this seems super straightforward, but they're things that we just don't think about, especially when you're tackling this gigantic challenge of getting a brand new job. Contributions. So this looks respectable. She has, you know, a decent amount of green in there. However, that's until you find out that Kelly has coded every single day for the past year, except for 9 days. So look at all of these weeks that show absolutely no activity. So the moral of this story is, if you're coding, you must commit. Make sure that it is reflected here so that everyone knows you are continuing to work on your code, whether it's personal projects, as you're doing a job search, or whether it's you're still in a full-time job, maybe even doing this stuff as a data scientist, but you still had activity being put in there. And if you've never changed the default contribution settings, you do not get credit for all the commits that you've made on a private repo. I wish I could explain that more, but admittedly, I don't know all the ins and outs of GitHub as using it as a coder. But once again, all the resources will be included for you when you go back to these slides. All right, so to summarize this part, make it easy for people to learn more about you and your skills and to identify you. Let's go green. If you're coding, commit. We cannot have commitment issues if you are looking for a job. You need to show them, especially if you are not currently in a role that screams, I love data and I'm good with data. You have got to show them that you are continuing to work on these skills on your own. And then playing favorites. Pin your best work up to the main page. Now, I just found this out talking to a software engineer yesterday that you can pin your best work to your main page, but that doesn't necessarily mean your best repository. Sometimes your best work is an open source project that you're passionate about, so make sure that you're pinning that repository as one of your favorites. All right, so we're gonna go through this quickly. The recipe for a good repository. Let's start off with a README. So this should be like your table of contents. Actually, many READMEs contain a table of contents, but it should be outlining the goals and the purpose for your project. So if you're presenting a project as a tutorial, explain the business use case. And this is really important and something that a lot of students that go through this boot camp struggle to make this connection. Having a business use case does not mean that it needs to be on a business topic. So tell the reader why they want to learn the skills that you used in your project while telling your next employer how you can contribute to the business. So let's go back to Kelly's word ladder example. The purpose can be to build a fun game while gaining experience with NLP tools and getting practice deploying a web application. Highlighting the tools that are on your resume, but only if you have actually used them on this project. So if it goes on your resume, if it's on your LinkedIn, if it's mentioned in your GitHub, it is fair game. So make sure that you are prepared to talk like an expert on these tools. And you don't need to master the art of Markdown, but you should have basic style elements like bolding things, bulleting stuff, and adding images to your list of things to learn right now. Organization, straightforward, make it look nice, don't have clutter, put things in folders, make the folders self-descriptive, and if you have more than 7 loose files, they should be in a folder. All right, code, which is something I cannot talk extensively on, but the advice that I was given to give you is cleaning up every code file, adding commentary to your code. So not just comments, but I think this is another opportunity for you to kind of tell a story and have a narrative around it. So do your best to have a comment for every step in your process. And again, there's going to be a link to learn more about what reproducible code is in that PDF. But basically, from what I gather, it's writing code so that someone can follow along. And then active ingredients. Oh. These are random things, tips from people who actually use Git. Again, you'll have more resources on this, but I just wanted to lay it out here. So that's all I have, which was a lot. I want to give thanks to Kelly, first of all, for nominating me, suggesting that I do this. I am so grateful to her for that. I love helping people realize how great they are beyond just having technical skills, and that's why I'm in this role. So I feel really honored to be able to get to talk to a big group of people. And she did all of these beautiful graphics and designs. And then she has where she got a lot of these. All right, so we have 4 minutes for questions.
How would you suggest allocating time over a week to networking, co-collaborating, job applications?
Yeah, this is actually a question I just answered for a recent grad. I would split your time in half, 50-50. You need to be working on projects. A lot of people ignore that and they're just focusing on leak code stuff. You have got, like I said, your projects are your proof that you can actually do these things, and you need to be able to talk about them in detail and with passion. And so half of your day should be dedicated to working on a personal project. And then the other half of your day can go into the actual job search, which also includes doing the code stuff, whatever technical things you need to go over, applying, reaching out on LinkedIn, doing whatever networking. But it's something that not a lot of people do, and I'm not sure why, but half of your time you have got to get more stuff in your own personal portfolio.
Okay. That seems like a lot. How would you prioritize as a follow-up?
How to prioritize? That's a great question. So I guess the priority would be to first identify a project that you want to work on. So the easiest way to do this is to honestly find a partner. If you can find a partner that's on this journey and you can start by doing like a project as a group, that's a great first step. It kind of takes that intimidating, oh my gosh, there are so many things I can choose from. But if you are able to collaborate with someone, that's great. And then I suppose beyond, so I'm just going to take the project part because people manage projects differently, but the rest of your networking or job searching, number one priority should be a really solid resume that screams, I'm a data scientist, or I love data. And over, you know, almost 2/3 of your resume, even if you are not coming from a data job, should say how great you are with data, which is why it's super important to have these projects that you can put on your resume. I think we got, yeah, one more. So just one off. So like you wouldn't be necessarily building a blog. I think people don't utilize this enough, but writing articles on LinkedIn, I think are great. And I do know there is some algorithmic benefit to creating your stuff on there where it's gonna give you access to even more people if you do it through their site. But I think LinkedIn needs to have more blog type content from people talking about their job search and what they're going through personally, emotionally. I mean, the job search is hard. It's really hard now because we have a lot of experienced professionals coming out of this or that have lost their jobs. And so they're competing with other people that are just trying to launch their career. So it's super tough. And I don't think enough people talk about that. And this isn't, everyone needs to commiserate and dwell in the negativity, but the job search is a bunch of no's until you get like one final solid yes. And that can really wear on your morale. So if you can share that experience with others, then let that be also therapeutic for you, but then it's going to be helpful for them too to realize, hey, I'm not alone in this. Just because I'm not getting interviews does not mean I'm not qualified for this. So thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate your time. I hope this was helpful. Again, I'm going to do a separate webinar on behavioral interviewing sometime next month, and I will post on LinkedIn. So at the very least, I would love to connect with you there.
We'll answer the rest of your questions on the GitHub. I sent out a link in the chat multiple times.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Liz, for the great workshop. Now this concludes our current session workshop. We'll have 10 minutes of a break and then we'll come back for our next panel. Thank you all for attending. Good job, Liz.
Thank you.